Hello! So today we're going to take a look at the Inibuilds P40 Warhawk in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So I've only started looking at warbirds just recently, so this is all a bit of a journey of discovery for me with how to operate them, how to fly them, and which are the good ones and which are the not so good ones in the simulator. So I think, as far as I've seen, this version of the P40 Warhawk is firmly in the middle ground, so it's very, very accessible to newcomers. It doesn't really penalise you too much for doing things incorrectly inside the airplane, so you can't lunch the engine too easily. And you can throw it around the sky pretty easily. So, we're going to take it for a flight. We're at Boonville in the US. But before we do so, let's go and have a little look around the aircraft itself. So, it's been updated multiple times since it was originally released. It's been out for at least 18 months at this point. But you can see, as is typical with Inibuilds, it's very, very nicely done. So the texture modelling throughout, and the material modelling I should say throughout, is very, very, very good. Yeah, so it looks almost photographic. So if we come up over the top of the wing, so this livery is one of the civilian liveries available with it, but there are multiple military liveries as well for different areas of the world that saw the P40. So I think this is one of the later models of the P40. So if we go and look around inside the cockpit, you can see it's all really nicely modelled. And if we go and look closely at the gauges, you can see the switchgear and the gauges are really well done. And looking around inside the seat and at the walls of the cockpit, I think the P40 had a bigger cockpit compared to many aircraft of its era. Things like the Spitfire and the Hurricane are much more snug, or tightly fitting around the pilot, let's put it that way. So there's a huge nose boss and this great big radiator on the front of the aeroplane. And sizable propeller as well. They're not as big as the propellers on some of the other fighters of the era, but it's still pretty big. The texture work around the aeroplane is great. And obviously you can see chrome always looks good in Flight Simulator, and it looks really good, or bare metal I should say, and it looks really good on this aeroplane. Okay, so without further ado, let's go and jump inside the aeroplane, and we'll put the head tracking on so we can have a look around. So you do have the option of either showing the original gun sight, or if you click this switch you can flick it over and show an EFB, or electronic flight book, I guess. EFB, is that what it stands for? Anyway, you get some options in here, so you can show a map display, for example, or you can come back to the home screen. You can show maintenance for the aircraft, so you can see wear and tear. You can get weather information via ICAO code for each airfield. There's a timer. There's some very bizarre things in here. And there's some basic settings to go between a civilian or a military variant. Okay, so I'm going to go without the EFB because I don't like it. It's just my personal preference. Let's give the controls a stir around, so you can see all the linkages are modelled, which is really nice. Also, we can waggle the rudder, and we can look outside and see the ailerons move. Let's go have a look at the back of the aeroplane. So let's see the rudder and the elevators. Okay. So how do we get this thing fired up? Let's go and turn the batteries on. And we've got, I'm just looking through all the switches, so we've got braking switches across the top of here. We've got various light switches, running signals on, so let's go and see what we've got. There's running signals. Just trying to check which lights. It's switched on these lights underneath the wings, isn't it? Okay. So we'll put the pre-oiler on. Fuel primer on. Fuel pump was on already. That explains a lot. That explains what the noise was. And we've got a fuel shut-off valve, or fuel selector I should say, somewhere around here. So there's the, I'm just going to turn off head tracking for a moment. So there's the magnetos. So put those to both. So then we've got, yeah, here we go. Here's the fuel selector underneath here, look. So we want rear wing. Then we've got the mixture. You've got the propeller control, and you've got the throttle. So we'll open the throttle a little way. And I guess, without further ado, we just try and start the engine, do we? So I just have to check around before we do that. Make sure we're not missing anything absolutely obvious. I'm always a little bit, what's the word, careful with airplanes I don't know, but I'm also aware that this isn't simulated to the nth degree, so you have got various things like the radiator flaps, similar to the Spitfire and Hurricane. Okay, should we start the engine and see how we get on? So flip the switch up. Interesting, isn't it? If you run the fuel pump, I'm just watching these engine gauges. If we run it up to 1500 RPM, now does the propeller RPM make a significant difference to it? No. Coolant temperature is rising. I'm just watching some of these needles. See, this is why I don't think it's that wonderfully modelled, to be honest. So if we go for the different magnetos, so we're going to get 100 RPM drop. That seems about right. No variation between the two. And back to both. Okay. So let's calibrate the altimeter. Looks like it was already good. Turn the radios on. Not that we're going to need them, we're not actually going to use them. Okay, turn the generators on. So we've got amperage all of a sudden, which is good. Pull the RPM back to 1000. Okay. No time like the present, I guess. Let's go and try and fly this thing, shall we? So I'm just centering up the camera. So I'm reliably informed that aircraft of this era tended to take off with the canopy open because there were so many accidents with them. If the pilot needed to get out in a hurry, it was a wise choice to keep the canopy open until you were stabilised climbing out. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And we're going to accelerate quite smoothly if we can. Try and stay somewhere near the runway. It's quite twitchy on the rudder. It's quite heavy on the nose as well, so gear up. Okay, so we can close the canopy. Back down the valley towards Boonville. Put it back to 50% throttle as we cruise back and get it trimmed out. You can see letting go of the stick, it's going nose down quite hard. So I'm going to trim the aeroplane out. I'm still trimming. I haven't put a lot of trim in. There we go. So it's now flying stably on its own in a straight line, which is good. Let's open the throttle up a bit. So, running at 75% power, we're right on the limit of the RPM. We can pull the propeller back a bit probably. Okay, so now we're in the air. The RPM is having an effect. On the ground it really didn't. I just want to get it away from max RPM. So in terms of power, 100% power takes us up to the red line on the manifold pressure. Like I said, I think the aeroplane is quite simplified, so you can't really break the engine as far as I'm aware. Okay, so there's the airfield down below us. Let's try some basic manoeuvres out then. So we go for an aileron roll. And that's bizarre. Let's try that again. So that was without maximum control deflection. Let's try that again, going uphill. Interesting, so why did it suddenly stop rolling previously? Okay, if you use maximum aileron, it has this hole in its flight model by the look of it. So you need to be careful of that. It seems like we're sat miles back. We should probably be a lot closer, so I'm going to skid us closer. The default camera angle isn't in the best place in the aeroplane, I don't think. Okay, should we try a stall? So just holding the nose up, watching the speed fall off, down to 100 miles an hour. Full back stick now, and it's dropped the left wing. Hold the rudder in, will it spin? I don't think it will. If I let go, it's just going to come out all on its own. Okay, at least it's nice and predictable. Like I said, I think the aeroplane has been aimed mostly at the middle of the market, so it's not hyper realistic at all, but it's good fun. Obviously looking at it from outside it looks beautiful. Let's just check the volume levels. So yeah, you can just about hear me over it. Okay, let's loop back down round the valley then. And go for an approach. I guess on the way in, let's keep an eye on our airspeed. Should go for a loop, just to see how well it handles it. So we get some speed up. No drama whatsoever. Okay, so we'll bleed some speed off as we turn in for an approach. So, given that we've never done an approach with it before, I'm inclined to be quite careful. So the airfield back there. So gear down. So we may do a touch and go first and then come back round. So you can see the flaps come out quite neatly. What the full flaps look like. They're certainly affecting the pitch control of the aeroplane. So yeah, the big old barn door flaps, aren't they? So you can see we're coming in quite fast. Even with the flaps and the gear, it's not wanting to slow down. Again, I guess in the real thing they would have opened the canopy, so then you can play games with looking at the side. This reminds me a lot actually of the DCS warbirds that really don't like going in a straight line. You have to actively use the rudder to keep the fuselage pointing the direction the aeroplane's going. So in a strange sort of way, that's a good sign. So I'll leave the canopy open this time. And we'll just loop round and come in for a full stop approach this time. For some reasons, I've turned the ground traffic back on, so just the appearance of an aeroplane in the parking area is causing the sim to stutter. Keeping half an eye on the airspeed. It really doesn't like going in a straight line on the ground. Okay, let's have a look at it from outside. Raise the flaps. We'll spin it round at the end of the runway. Park it here. Okay, so do we get an animation when we cut the mixture? Okay, interesting. Turn the fuel pump off. It's interesting, I looked through the instructions that come with the aeroplane, and there's nothing about turning the fuel pump off in the instructions, which is kind of strange, but there you go. Okay, so there we go. That was the Curtis P40 Warhawk in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I think it's really, really good. But then I think my bar is quite low compared to some people. And I know, the people that are looking for a super accurate aeroplane probably won't be happy with this. But if you're just looking for a nicely put together warbird that's very easy to fly, to go and have some fun with, then it's quite good. It is quite difficult to take off and land. As you just saw, I was weaving around a little bit. I wasn't as accurate as I have been with other warbirds recently that you could say are a little bit more realistic. So it's a bit of a handful. But once it's in the air, it's actually remarkably straightforward to fly. And you could see we couldn't spin it. We could drop a wing, but as long as you land at a sensible speed, you'll be fine, I think. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you enjoyed that. That's the Inibuilds Curtis P40 Warhawk in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I'll see you again soon.